Hello and welcome to the cult of SMMI. I am your host, Scott Mort. Today we continue Antoinette's story. Just to pick up where we left off, Antoinette has just escaped the order and is crossing the bridge into Staten Island. Once again, I do want to say that Antoinette's story, as with Mike's story, all falls under the umbrella of allegedly. These are their stories. I have no way to verify them. I have no way to dispute them. But I am just letting them tell them. If any members of the order would like to come on, or anybody who's had dealings with the order, the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate, would like to come on the show to verify or dispute any of these claims, they are welcome to do so. I can be contacted at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. And now, Antoinette continues.
I got stopped by the police, and the police ended up, I wouldn't tell them where I was coming from, but they found, just by little bits that I told them, they found out who I was, because my stepfather, was a politician. So they called him, and they came and got me. And I never did get to Staten Island, because I was thinking if I could get to Staten Island and I could get to my pen pal, I could escape both the convent and my parents. But I never made it. So, because I tried to walk across this bridge. So, but that's how I left. And I felt guilty about it for years and years, because of course my parents were not nice to me when I got home, and I always felt like I had let everybody down. And so years and years later, I started looking for Sister Teresa and Mother Elizabeth. I mean, I was married and had some children at that time, and I was like, I just need to apologize for the way that I left, And so I started looking them up, and that's how I found Mike. I came across him on Fat Mass.
How instrumental do you think Mike has been in exposing what the SMMI was?
Probably a lot. I know that he has a lot of questions that probably can't be answered unless you were a part of it. But I think that he realized the toxicity of maybe his sister, and has been able to expose, because now at 50, I'm almost 51 years old. I'll be 51 in March. I can look back and say this was not normal. First of all, they should have told that 16-year-old girl, no. You know what I mean? Like, right. The convent is not a place to escape your parents. Like, this is not why we joined the convent. And then, some of the other stuff, like, we were told, we didn't go grocery shopping because that's part of poverty, because we had all these vows. We had 4 vows. Well, the 3 vows that most religious take is poverty, chastity, and obedience. And part of poverty was, we lived on donations, so that was that. So there were hard times, and there was, we had more food than some of the other places in the order. When we traveled to visit other houses that didn't have schools attached to them where they could get free meals, those sisters, we at least got 1 meal a day during the weekdays, unless you were a slut and locked in your room. So,
wow. Kind of opening my eyes to a lot.
Yeah.
One more thing about Mike. You've listened to the other 5 episodes of this.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you disagree with Mike about, or think that maybe Mike got a little bit wrong, or maybe his vision was a little bit clouded by being so close to this? Is there anything that Mike is saying that you feel is incorrect in any way.
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
when this happened with me. So it's not like I can even look at it with adult eyes, because what I experienced as a child. And also, I wasn't given privy to a lot. I was kind of like, I was treated like a child too, a bad child, but I was treated like a child. I was not, I was treated like a child with a promise of being this glorious, saint, you know, and that's kind of how they cajoled me into doing anything and everything, and like I said, bad cop, good cop. I can see his portrait of his sister because Sister Teresa was the bad cop and Mother Elizabetha was the good cop, always, you know. Um, and, Sister Teresa, she had this thing where um, she would be very, very quiet and then all of a sudden just explode, you know, and um, a lot of it too, the sister that was, a lot of it before this incident with this student, a lot of it was directed towards the other sister in the house with me and not me. The other sister, we weren't allowed to bathe privately or use our bathroom privileges were not private. Okay. So this sister just sometimes didn't bathe because she, and so she'd get yelled at about that or, she was a little absent-minded. Like I don't know. I don't know if there was something wrong with her or something like that, but she was a little absent-minded, and so she was always being yelled at. There was always yelling going on. There was always yelling and pounding and throwing and all kinds of stuff. So her that kind of story, it matches with what I remember, and I also read the HuffPost. You know, when the HuffPost article came out, I wasn't ready to talk yet because I was going through a divorce with my husband and all of that. And the sisters that participated in that, um, I read their stories too, and it seems to, it seems to match up. Sister Teresa's presence was a gift. We were to see it as a gift. Um, you know, um, God spoke through Mother Elizabetha. She was not to be questioned. That's what the fourth vow was all about. I know I texted you about that. The
Yes.
fourth vow of being at God's disposal meant that we did not question Mother Elizabetha ever because God spoke through her. She had a direct line to God. And if she said something, then it was the word of God. And so that was what the fourth
It's
vow was about.
it's almost like it looks like a vow to God, but it's actually kind of a snuck in control method.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, because and that's what I was told the whole time. I was going to be the one that started this order in Asia, and I was going to have to learn to listen to Mother Elizabetha because God talks to Mother Elizabetha, and then Mother Elizabetha was going to tell me what to do, and I was going to tell all these sisters in Asia what to do. I don't know. I don't think they ever got to Asia because I don't know if they ever found another um, Asian sister. You know what I mean? But I do know. I learned Italian while I was there, and um, you know, so there was just a lot of it was a lot. Um, I we didn't. I remember one time. When I thought it was so strange, I was having dental issues, and most times the sisters didn't get their medical things dealt with. It was, if you were suffering physically or whatever, it was you had to give it to God. But I was brought to the dentist, and the best I could guess is because I was a minor. You know what I mean? So if they neglected me, there probably would have been pushback. You know what I mean? If I appeared neglected. in any way. So I was brought to her father, who was a dentist, to have some dental work done. And before we went there, I was told, number one, that I was not to answer any of her father's questions. She was going to speak for me. I was to stay silent. And if we saw her brother, who I don't know, wasn't much older than me. If he is older than me, I don't know. But we were not to make any eye contact. So so I was just like, oh my God. So I was scared. I was just like, okay. You know what I mean? So I just went in there and let the man work on my teeth and just let her answer all the questions for me. So, but that's kind of how it was. If we dealt with anybody outside of the convent, she spoke for us. We weren't allowed to speak, I think I may have blocked a whole lot out. I do know I was having a pretty severe argument with Sister Teresa at one point, and I ended up at the bottom of the stairs. And I don't know how I got there. I don't remember her pushing me, hitting me, or whatever. But I do remember being told to just get upstairs and get to my room, And that was about the time, it was the same day that we were arguing over whether or not this boy having a crush on me meant that I was being a slut, and I was just like, I didn't do anything, I was teaching the kid about the rosary, you know what I mean? So yeah, it was interesting, some of the things that happened. But yeah, she was, the only other time I remember her putting her hands on me is she had an issue with people watching her when she brushed her teeth. Okay. And so she was brushing her teeth one day, and she called me into her room because, and so I went into her room, and she gave me instructions about something. I don't know what we were doing that day, but it was instructions. And she started brushing her teeth just like all of a sudden. She decided to just get up from her chair and start brushing her teeth. And I was standing there because I didn't know whether the conversation was over or not. You know what I mean? And, if you walked away from her and she was still talking, that was like hell on wheels. So, like, I was standing there looking at her, and she was like, don't look at me when I'm brushing my teeth. And she, like, pushed me, out of her door, and I remember falling, on my butt, outside her door, and she slammed the door, and I'm like, okay, I guess, conversation over, but that's just kind of how things went,
Okay.
And also another thing, a spiritual advisor. We were given a spiritual advisor, right? But I was never allowed, like, spiritual advisors in the Catholic Church, when you're a religious, okay, it's a priest, and you talk to them about your spiritual development and what God's calling to you to do. And is God really calling you to be a religious? Is there something, to adjust your studies? Are you understanding God's call correctly? I was never allowed to, I wasn't able to see my spiritual advisor alone. Sister Teresa or the other sister had to be in the room with me at all times. I wasn't allowed to speak with him alone. And even my confession, I was behind a screen, but there was somebody else there with me because, I couldn't be trusted to be with a man alone, even a priest. So confession is supposed to be between you and God and the priest. But I always had somebody else in there with me because, I couldn't be trusted around men.
Astounding. Absolutely astounding.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I didn't have it as bad as most of the other sisters, and I was only in there, almost 2 years. But it was, I think that my story mostly highlights how young they were willing to go,
Right.
I mean, I was a child.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just, I think most of, as far as the damage to me personally goes, I think a lot of it came afterwards, because when I was in there, I was kind of, I call it robot mode. I've had therapy, because like I said, I have a childhood past too, and then this, of course, on top of it. But, I've been in therapy for a while. My therapist called it disassociation. And I think I was in a disassociative state for most times in the convent. I remember thinking of myself as being very manipulative because sometimes when I was punished, I was put in the chapel and I was told to kneel. And one time I was in the chapel for over 24 hours, before dinner one night to after everybody had gone to bed the next night, Um, and we had two positions in the chapel we were allowed. We were allowed to kneel on the floor, not on the kneelers, but on the floor, or we were allowed to be prostrate, which meant, on the floor with your face pressed into the floor. And I know I spent a lot of that night prostrate, but I wasn't really praying. I was kind of sleeping. So I thought of myself as, manipulative, because I was like, oh my God, I'm really manipulating this. And, I have this great calling because God has told, so like it played with my head a lot. And so when I left, the way that I left, I spent like 20 something years thinking that I was this horrible bad person that was going to go to hell because I walked away from a calling that, and so that was a bigger trauma than any of the physical punishments or things that I endured in there, was that thought, and when I finally got in touch with Mike on Fat Mass, and he sent me the letters, about Mother Elisabetta and what happened with the order, and kind of, what when she got investigated, what the Vatican found and all of that, things started clicking into place. Because, at this point, I'm in my 40s and I'm an adult, right? So I'm like, okay, well, this is making sense. So I wasn't bad, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to hell, you know what I mean? But I'm, had I stayed, I probably would have been more abused more as time went on. You know what I mean? Because, brainwashing takes a while, you know? Um, so I was only there, a little under 2 years, so I didn't get as much as some of the sisters that were in for like 19 years, 15 years, whatever, because they had more time to be brainwashed. And, but I'm pretty sure that would have happened if I'd stayed in there. Not only would I have been abused more and more, I think that I would have been trained to abuse other girls more and more. And that thought terrifies me because I wanted to be wanted and I wanted to have meaning to my life so badly that I was willing to do anything. And I thought God spoke through this woman, you know what I mean? I remember one time, she came to America. It was after I had had a tantrum with Sister Teresa, and she came and she literally sat on my bed and rocked me like a baby. Like I was literally sitting in her lap and she was rocking me like a baby, just like cooing at me like I was two, you know. And I remember, it was just what I needed because I had never gotten that from my mom. My mom never hugged me, kissed me, or anything like that. But of course, she knew that because I had told her this. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like they gave me everything that I wanted in order to stop me from seeing what was actually going on. And I could feel at this point, now that I'm removed from it, and I've heard the whole story and everything, and even as I was listening to the podcast, the first 5 that you had given with Mike, I like my blood ran cold. Like I literally got goosebumps and stuff because I was like, they were training me to be just like them. You know what I mean? By giving me everything that I didn't have as a child. And you would think that makes them better, but that's not what they were doing. They were at the same time training me, because Sister Teresa, when she got done yelling at that other sister that was in there with me, she would always come to me and tell me what this other sister had done wrong. And just like, you remember this, because you're going to have girls do this. And you're going to have to do just what I did. You know what I mean? So they were training me. So I I think just getting out when I did, like I'm sitting here shaking just thinking about what I could have done to other girls' lives, you know?
One final question. If you don't want to answer this, this is totally fine. If 50-year-old you as you are now, could go back and speak to Sister Teresa and Mother Elisabetta, what would you say to them from the position that you're at right now?
About me well, about me, a couple of things. About me, I would say, hey, that's a child, and you don't need to be messing with that development. The development was messed anyway, you know what I mean? But leave her alone is basically what I would say, you know. Um, about the order as a whole, this isn't God's work. This isn't God's work. This isn't, we don't bring people in and beat them into obedience, and we don't throw things at them, and we don't push them, and we don't, give them physical punishments. you know um we don't take medical conditions and say, well, you're suffering, because God wants you to suffer, type of thing. We don't do that. That's not God. That's not God. And if somebody spoke to Mother Elizabeth, it wasn't God. It was, I don't know, I don't know. I'm not going to try to mentally diagnose her, but what she was hearing wasn't God. Because I don't think God would treat people this way. And I, like I said, my blood runs cold because I was, I didn't endure some of the things that the other sisters did, but I can feel how I was being brainwashed because I was too easily manipulated.
Antoinette, thank you for being here with us. It's very appreciated.
No problem.
I'm honored. I am honored. Antoinette wanted me to add the following on to this episode. Antoinette said, I forgot to add, my grandmother gave the SMMI order about $150,000. It was my inheritance from my grandfather, and apparently it was transferred to the order when they took custody of me. I was told it was my dowry. Antoinette continues, I just remembered another thing. Our mail, any mail coming into us, any letters were read by Sister Teresa before they were given to us. And if she did not like the contents, she would not give us the letter or mail. Also, anything going out was read too. She also held our IDs and social security cards. I had to get new ones after I left. We were allowed no money at all, and our paychecks went to the order. I don't know if that was standard. Of course, it was all part of the vow of poverty. Once again, if you would like to contact us, you can do so at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Take care of yourselves and each other.